Hello everyone, welcome to Roots and Shoots time for this week. I'm really happy that you could join me today. Let's start off with our finger prayer and then we can jump right into our story time together. So remember to get your little fingers ready and we'll do this together and you can learn the actions if you haven't been doing it with us so far. And we're doing this because sometimes it's nice to have a rhythm to your prayer and to not have to think so much about the perfect words to say, because God doesn't really care what your exact words are when you're praying. He just wants to hear from you and to talk to you. So sometimes it can be nice, especially when you're little, to have a little rhythm to go through. So here we go. Let's do it together. Dear Jesus, Jesus, hear this prayer I send. Bless my family and my friends. Jesus, help my eyes to see all the good things you do for me. Jesus, help my ears to hear calls for help from far and near. Jesus, help my feet, put down your feet to go in all the ways that you will show. Jesus, help my hands to do all things that are loving and kind and true. Jesus, guard me through that day in all I do and all I say. Amen. So let's jump into our story time for the day. And we have been looking through a series called Knowing Jesus in a New Way. And it is focusing on the events that happened in God's story after Easter time. So we're stretching out some of those stories and some of those events so that we can look at them in different ways. So the first week we learned about this together. We talked about the women who went to the tomb on that Sunday morning to complete some burial rites, and they found that the rock had been moved away from the tomb where Jesus had been buried, and Jesus's body was gone. So they were amazed by this, and they ran to tell the disciples, some of whom came to check it out. And as word began to spread, Mary Magdalene, who was one of Jesus's dear friends, stood outside of the tomb and cried because she was sad and she missed her friend and she didn't know what was going on exactly. And she just wanted to be able to have closure and say goodbye to her dear friend. And then she saw a man who spoke with her, and at first she thought he was the gardener. She did not recognize him, but then he, after they spoke together for a little bit, she realized that this was Jesus, and he had defeated death, and he was resurrected just like he had said he would be, and that this was proof, of course, that he really was the Son of God. So then we moved on the second week, and we talked about the men who were walking on the road from Jerusalem to the town of Emmaus, and they ran into a stranger. And as they told the stranger all about the events that had been happening in those last 3 days, he said, "Look, guys, let's look at this together and talk about it." And he opened up the scriptures to them and he talked with them and explained everything about how the prophets had been calling for these special things to be happening for generations and for many, many, many years, and how this really shouldn't be such a mystery to them because they just had to have faith that this was all part of God's plan. And so when they reached the hotel that night where they were going to stay, they invited the stranger to stay with them and to eat with them. And he did, and he took some bread and he blessed it. And when he gave it to them to eat, it was like their eyes were opened, and all of a sudden they recognized him. They hadn't before, but now they knew this was their friend, Jesus. And he disappeared. He didn't stick around. And they, after some time eating and talking, just the two of them, they decided to go back to Jerusalem to tell the other disciples that were there, Jesus's other friends, that just like the women, they had seen Jesus and that he had defeated death and that he really must be the Son of God. So now here we are on the third week of our series, and it is nighttime. It is dark in Jerusalem. The disciples are all gathered together in a home and they're hiding. because there's a lot of conflict going on in the city these days right now. It's not exactly the safest thing to come out and say that you are one of Jesus's supporters and friends. So they're hiding, the doors are locked, they're not really sure what to do. They are afraid that soldiers are going to come and take them, just like they had taken Jesus. Someone all of a sudden said, "Peace be with you." And they looked up, and it was Jesus. And at first they thought he was a ghost or something, but he spoke with them and he sat with them, and they saw his wounds on his hands and his feet where he had been mounted on the cross and crucified. He ate some fish with them. Ghosts do not eat fish. And he talked with them and he opened the scriptures to them, just like he had done when he was walking with the men to Emmaus and explaining everything to them. And finally he said again, "Peace be with you," and he left. Now, Jesus' friend Thomas, one of the disciples, hadn't been there that night. He'd been somewhere else. So when he got back the next day, and the friends told him that Jesus had appeared in the room and had eaten fish with them and he was not dead and that he really must be the Son of God, he didn't believe them. He had doubts all the way to his bones. And he's like, "No, I am not going to believe this story until I see it with my own eyes and I can touch the wounds myself." Why wouldn't there be some doubt, right? Their minds were stretching to be big enough to understand this miracle and to be able to know Jesus in this new way. So it is understandable. So 8 days passed. The disciples were once again gathering and they were eating in that room. All the doors were shut. They were all locked. The windows were bolted. This time Thomas was there. He was with them. And a voice again said, "Peace be with you." And again, they turned around and there was Jesus with them again. And this time he walked right up to Thomas and he held out his hands and he said, "Touch me." And all Thomas could do was fall to his knees in amazement. And he touched the wounds and he said, "Oh, my Lord, my God." Jesus looked at Thomas for a really long time and he said, "Now, do you believe me because you have seen? Well, blessed are those who have not seen and yet they believe." So next week, we're going to learn more about Jesus in this new way as we explore what happened after Easter in God's story. And this is the time when we do some I Wondering time together. So again, we're doing it a little bit differently with this series. I would like you to take a minute, think about the story that you just heard. Think about if there's something in your house, maybe in this room, maybe in your backyard, maybe in your house, that you feel like would add to this story. Is there something missing? Is there something that you think will add to this story and make things more clear? Is there something that reminds you of your favorite part? It's pretty open. I don't know what you're going to grab. Only you know what you're going to grab. So take some time, go and look around, find an object, bring it back to your circle here, and spend some time talking together about why you brought what you brought to the circle. What does it add to our circle? What does it add to our story? And if you're by yourself, then just take some time to think about it. And then you can move into some creative response time where maybe you draw a picture or build with a Lego or create something that will help to explain why you chose that item or those items to add to our circle. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we're heading into some warmer weather again, and all this snow will be gone hopefully, and we can spend some time in nature and enjoying creation, getting some fresh air and some exercise. So hang in there. I'm thinking about you and praying for you, and I hope that you feel seen and connected with and loved this week.